I like this video because it looks like it was made by a human. That string of words would sound insane if it was heard just a few years ago, but now it's something that we can now instinctively understand, much because of how popular and present in our lives AI has become in the past few years. And because of AI generated, or at the very least AI refined content, made by a human is not just a given anymore, and I think it's something that we now look for. And especially here on YouTube, I think it's easy to see the impacts of their realization on the types of content that we watch. And I think there are three types of popular videos that are directly related to this new craving for human-made stuff. And at first, they might seem unrelated, and the audience for one doesn't necessarily overlap with the others. But I think the rising popularity of all three speaks to the same shared instinct. Recently, we've seen this huge growth in popularity in what's usually called low-effort content. But let me clarify, this doesn't mean content that's poorly made or even amateur. It just means content that isn't super produced. There's no fancy lighting or over the top editing. Sometimes it's just a person, a microphone, maybe a script, and a camera. And whenever you hear YouTube experts giving you tips on how to be successful, you usually hear about how you have to edit for retention, how you should have the best possible lighting, and a studio quality recording. And I'm not saying that those things aren't actually useful, but the low effort content being so popular shows us that there is an avenue for other types of videos that go in the opposite direction of that professional quality, at least when it comes to production value. And for obvious reasons, we immediately recognize that less polished content as something that was made by a fellow human. Reaction content is another type that has become ubiquitous, not just on YouTube but on Twitch and even Instagram. And while I do have some issues with it, especially around platform responsibility with things like proper revenue sharing and credit for original creators, it's easy to understand why reaction content works. Obviously, we might like that streamer or reactor, but there's more to it. Even when the reaction isn't super transformative, it feels like someone is watching it with us. Especially for faceless channels or ones we're unfamiliar with, just having a person in the corner reacting gives the video a whole human presence. And finally, we have slop or drama content, filled with controversial creators who say the wrong thing, apologize poorly, or even double down on their dramas. And no matter how much we say it's cringe or complain about it, we're seeing very human traits like pettiness, ego, bad takes, and drama in general. These creators feel real, including their flaws and manufactured dramas. They make mistakes, and in a weird way, that's something we connect to. And if that didn't matter before, it does now, because we're in a time where not everything is made by people anymore. AI generated content is all over the place, and I think, whether we notice it or not, it's changing how we perceive content. There's a strange split that happens whenever a YouTuber is exposed for likely using AI generated content. Some people respond by saying, wait, I've been watching this channel for months and never noticed anything, but now I'm not going to watch any other video. But others will say, I don't really care. As long as the content is good and the voiceover is clean, I'm fine with it. And that always reminds me of a scene from Westworld where William asks one of the hosts if she's real, and her answer is, if you can't tell, doesn't matter. Now, there are actual concerns around AI generated content. We have things like plagiarism, misinformation, uncanny visuals or voices, and even that whole discussion about whether or not it can actually be considered art. But even with all of that, the technology is already good enough for a lot of people, and it's only getting better. And here's where things get a bit weird. I don't think the whole dead internet theory is real, at least not yet, and I certainly have a pulse. But I'm pretty sure that most of the big websites we visit every day already use AI in some way. Maybe not to generate all their content, but at least to refine it. I wouldn't even be shocked if a few best-selling books or academic papers from the past couple of years were written with AI in some capacity. So what happens when even the sources we rely on for research, for information, or even for fun are filtered through some kind of artificial model? I wonder if that will make us actually start going backward, watching old shows, reading old books, replaying old games, just to feel something more human, something made before AI and algorithms became so present. And since AI tools have become so common, I've had this weird thought in the back of my head. What if there's a huge YouTube channel out there, maybe it's even one we all watch regularly, that's 100% AI generated, and it's all part of a research project, and someday they reveal it, and we'll all be shocked that we didn't notice. Now, I'm not trying to be overly negative, and I think there's actually a good ending here, and maybe it's a middle ground, a future where humans create, and if needs be, AI refines. But I do think that, as viewers, we have some power. We can support content that feels real, and since AI models are trained on existing data, it's easy for AI-generated content to sound repetitive or plagiarized. And maybe the stuff we support will be a little more unpolished. Perhaps the sentences won't be as well spoken, the accents will be noticeable, and the takes won't always be something that we agree with. But that's the point. That's what makes it human. And I know it sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but we may not be far from a future where we compliment something simply because it looks like it was made by a person. But at some point, and maybe we've already crossed that line, we'll be so surrounded by AI generated content and bots interacting with it that we won't even notice. So I guess the final question is, if we can't tell the difference, does it matter?